So what that requires is what I've already said. It's combining hardware and software thinking, feeling the city through the senses, really actually using every sense that you've got to think about what Umeå is as a place. And many of the things that are valuable are, of course, invisible. And the challenge, I think, of the cultural institutions is to make those intangible, positive things visible in some sense, because they are important, how we emotionally, for example, feel about the place. So, more or less finally, if you looked at criteria to describe a vibrant place, you'd find one thing would be critical mass of activity in some sense, and you've got that in some fields. The other point is identity and distinctiveness, something that only could happen here. Thirdly, the capacity to show that you're being innovative in one way, but to make it visible. It's again this question of visible. If we don't know it's happening and can't see it, it may as well, in some sense, not exist. Being aware of these diversity issues we've talked about, finding forms of accessibility, both in terms of the way the buildings speak to the street. I mean, I don't know what that street's called, Vasagatan, which goes from, is it that one from the opera down? You know, you want to connect it to the new ideas of the down the bottom on the river, but every building there, apart from the first school, sort of says no. It's a negative experience, and it's an important street. Then there's that sense of trust, which I think obviously we have in Nordic countries, that sense of the civic, and then linkage and synergy. This is just a summary of what we've said. Interestingly, they're all linked, but they're not talking to each other, but that's a separate issue. So what that all amounts to, in some sense, is competitiveness. And back to this guy here, if you work out those cities as succeeding, some that have very little resources, the reason they've succeeded is they have some sense of organizational capacity. So what we've done, as you can see, is the notion of a resource has completely transformed. Resources used to be physical, but that, to me, is the resource of resource, the capacity to look ahead, the capacity to govern differently, and so on. This must bloody stop. It will stop. So, finally, we're coming to the fact that city making, in that sense, is not an accident. It's actually about the choices, the political choices we're making now. It's not a game of gambling. It's about focus, and really, in a sense, I'm saying it's in your hands in one way. And that reminds me of leadership. There are three ways of looking at leaders: the ordinary leader, the innovative leader, and the inspirational leader. This is the ordinary leader, this person here, metaphorically, who responds to what you've already got. You know, we want more car parking, all quite important stuff, you know. The innovative leader brings quite interesting things together in new ways, but because your main thing on the 2016 bid is about storytelling, the inspirational leader tells a story of the place to be where the citizen feels they want to be a maker, shaper, and co-creator of that joint story. And that is the form of leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't mean one leader. You've got 112,000 people. If 1% were only leaders, that's 1,112 starters. And that's not very many, 1%. So that's the sort of leadership we're talking about. And finally, I think great places are quite humorous in one way or another. You know, they drag out the thinking of cities out, the old thinking. That might be your new city plan. It might look like this. It might be a knitting competition you do with a group. Sorry, no, perhaps you shouldn't do that. But it would be a way of representing your urban plan. Or that could be your new design school. Could look like this. I don't know. This is Seoul. This is Seoul again. Magritte falling from the sky in a building. Or this is Paris. That surrealist building. Quite an interesting building. Anyway, I don't think we should really go there. But what I do think, finally, is that signs are important. Because I can't read all the signs, I'm not sure whether they say yes or no. But in Britain, most signs say no, which is the opposite of the creation place. So few places say welcome, hello, this is good, how about, and so on. So let's look at this. This sign I saw in Oxford, English Oxford, do not obstruct, do not play. Why don't we do the opposite? This goal is in constant use. More ball games rather than no ball games. Or finally, I haven't seen many dogs in Umeå, I've only seen about 10, but British people like dogs, and I've always made the suggestion that we should have 3-hour barking zones. And the mayors of those cities who dares do this for the first time will get re-elected, because all the dog lovers will... Anyway, that's enough. That's it. Thank you very much.